Good afternoon, Chair Thompson. We are ready when you are.
Thanks very much. It's now the hour of 5 o'clock. I will call this Committee of Adjustment meeting to order. I'll apologize to the gallery and to my committee members and the public who are watching. I'm forced to be in Toronto for work, so I have to attend virtually today. Typically, I like to be in person to chair this meeting, but unfortunately, my work has pulled me out of the area for tonight. So. Big thanks to Rayburn, who's done an excellent job of the script and making this as seamless as possible. So hopefully we will be able to proceed without any challenges. So I'll proceed with the land acknowledgement statement. In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and the culture of the Anishinaabe, the people of the Three Fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi Nation, who have inhabited this land from time immemorial, and further give thanks to the Chippewas of the Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. We recognize the Métis and Inuit, whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its diverse peoples. So I'll look to the committee and I will be looking to approve the agenda. The recommendation is that the agenda be approved as presented. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Committee Member McMillan, seconded by Committee Member Ladresse. All those in favor? Motion is carried. I'll ask for a so from the gallery. It will be hard to see you guys if you have a comment. So just sing out, and I'll adjust myself when I hear you. I'll ask for a declaration of pecuniary interest. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Committee Member Coburn.
I would just like to declare a potential indirect conflict of pecuniary interest for item 7.3. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Any other members can declare pecuniary interest at any point in the meeting if they feel inclined. Looking for a mover and a seconder to approve the minutes of the previous meeting, March 19th, 2024. Moved by Committee Member McMillan, seconded by Committee Member Moore-Coburn. All those in favor? That motion is carried. So I will go to unfinished business. Item 7.1, Dev 24-24, B0124, B0224, B0324, and A0124, severance and minor variance applications for Chadha and Newell. This is a meeting of the Committee of Adjustment to consider the application for minor variance for Parminder Chadha and Colleen Newell under Section 53 of the Planning Act regarding property located at part. I don't have the part number there. Sorry, let me check. As part of Lot 11, Jones Range, Keppel Township. Madam Secretary Treasurer, please go ahead with your review.
Thank you, Chair Thompson. There have been no requests for deferral or withdrawal of the application. Notice of this severance and minor variance in accordance with Ontario Regulation 197/96 made under the Planning Act was given on March 7th, 2024 by ordinary mail to all property owners within 60 meters of the property, which is subject to the application, and to all the required agencies. Notice was also posted on the subject lands and on the township's website. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Committee of Adjustment, you must make a written request to the Secretary Treasurer of the Committee. Only a person or public body that requests a notice of the decision of the committee in respect to this proposed minor variance and severance may submit an appeal.
Thank you. I will now read the recommendation as presented and ask for a mover and a seconder. It has been demonstrated that applications B0124, B0224, B0324, and A124 for Parminder Chadha and Colleen Newell for the lands described as part of Lot 11, Jones Range, Keppel Township, is consistent with the provincial policy statement, conforms to the County of Grey's official plan, and complies with the intent of the Township of Georgian Bluff zoning bylaw 2020-20. It is recommended that the application be approved, subject to the following conditions. The reference plan be completed and a copy filed with the municipal clerk, or an exemption from the reference plan be received from the Land Registry Office, that pursuant to Section 53, paragraph 42 of the Planning Act, the certificate of consent be affixed to the deed within 2 years of the giving of the notice of decision, or as specified in the Planning Act at the time of the deed stamping. Note, Section 53, paragraph 43 of the Planning Act requires that the transaction approved by this consent must be carried out within 2 years of the issuance of the certificate, i.e. the stamping of the deed. The applicant pays the applicable consent certification fee at the time of the certification of the deeds, that the applicant pay 5% cash in lieu of parkland in accordance with the Planning Act, that the archaeological assessment prepared by Scarlett Janissas Archaeology dated November 14th, 2020 be submitted but to the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation for review and approval, that a 0.3 meter reserve shall be conveyed to the County of Grey along the frontage of Grey Road 1, that a road widening of 33 feet be measured from the center line of Old Mill Road to be conveyed to the Township of Georgian Bluffs for the severed parcels, and that a zoning bylaw amendment be enacted to implement the consent. I'm going to ask for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Committee Member Moore-Colburn, seconded by Committee Member Ladresse. Could the planner give us a summary of the planning report regarding this file, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Applications B01, B02, and B03 2024 propose to sever 3 parcels intended for residential development from a 4.46 hectare parcel located along Grey Road 1. Application A0124 proposes to vary the shoreline residential zone to reduce the required minimum lot frontage from 36 meters to 20.63 meters for the parcel created under B03-24. In terms of, let's move down to comments, relevant consultation. As noted earlier, notice of complete application and notice of public meeting was circulated on March 4th, 2024 to various agencies and neighboring properties for review. Following comments were received and are attached in the report provided to the committee. County of Grey comments dated March 25th, 2024 note that in summary, County Transportation Services has reviewed the subject application and have a comment stating, as a condition of approval, a 0.3 meter reserve shall be conveyed to the County of Grey along the frontage of County Road to prevent future laneway access onto a county road. This shall be legally conveyed at the expense of the applicant. A road widening and a daylight triangle are not required as they are already adequate. Any future buildings are to maintain a 75-foot setback from the county right-of-way center line, and all future access points onto the county road must have an entrance permit approved. Provided that the recommendations in this assessment are, which would be the environmental impact study assessment, are implemented and the Conservation Authority is satisfied with findings of the coastal engineering assessment, the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation is satisfied with findings of the archaeological assessment, the sediment and erosion control plan is completed, mitigation measures listed by the county planning ecologist are implemented, and that county's transportation services requirements are addressed, county planning staff have no concerns. Great Sable Conservation Authority also commented on April 3rd, noting The GSCA generally has no objections to the proposed consent applications. Permits are required from our office under ORAG 41-24 for development activities within the regulated areas. They also note, please note, this includes shore wells, driveways, and any septic dwellings and or general site grading within a regulated area. The GSCA also recommends the hazard areas shown on mapping attached with their report to be zoned environmental protection in the township's comprehensive zoning bylaw. Hydro One comments were dated April 3rd, 2024, and they noted no concerns. Source protection comments were received March 7th with no concerns. We also received several comments from neighboring property owners and the public, and I will summarize those as follows. Dr. Sherry Thompson commented on April 2nd, noting that she had concerns over the proposal to subdivide the land into multiple properties and conduct multiple residential development projects that will impact the natural environment, the character of the neighborhood, the safety of motorists using Grey Road 1, and set a poor precedent for future development in Georgian Bluffs. Shelley Wilkin provided comments on April 2nd, and Ms. Wilkin noted concerns over the proposal to subdivide the land, noting that water runoff and flooding were significant concerns for them. She also noted concerns over the variance of lot frontages on lot 3, noting reduction in lot frontage should not be considered as minor. Ms. Wilkin also noted concerns over community character and the precedent-setting nature of the proposed development. We also received comments from Gary Gallen today and yesterday, and although they aren't included in the report, I'll make sure they are included in the minutes of the meeting. Mr. Gallen has concerns over the way notice was provided for the committee of adjustment, and he noted that he felt that the notice did not comply with the Planning Act, as it was not circulated to 100 residents within 120 meters of the subject application. And he also noted that the two notices that were provided, the physical notices that were provided on the subject property, were only provided on Grey Road 1 and not posted on Old Mill Road. With those, I provided comments back to Mr. Galen, noting that Ontario Regulation 19796, which is a regulation under the Planning Act concerning notice requirements for consent applications, does provide that notices to the neighboring property owners can be provided to lands only within 60 meters of the subject land, not 120 meters as one would see in other planning applications. Just getting back to the report, there were some, given the comments received, there were a number of requests that were put forward. And as one of the conditions of the severance application that was provided by the township, is to place a zoning bylaw amendment with a holding provision on it to help implement the recommendations provided by the commenting agencies. And that amendment would be also amending the environmental protection zone mapping that is requested by the Conservation Authority. And the holding provision would provide that site plans and development agreements prepared for the individual lots, demonstrating that the owner agrees to not remove any vegetation or otherwise disturb the Township of Georgian Bluffs shoreline allowance without the prior approval of the township, that any entrances for the proposed buildings be located above the dry flood proofing level of 178.7 meters, and that the lots shall generally maintain surface drainage to Colby's Bay, utilizing proper sediment and erosion control methods, and that those methods be installed prior to development commencing and maintained through the development. Disturbed areas shall be stabilized post vegetation and with native vegetation Soils planted with native vegetation shall be provided between the lots to maintain storm runoff quality and quantity moving north onto Old Mill Road municipal drain, and local fill shall be used. Tree and vegetation removal shall be limited to only what is necessary to accommodate building footprints and access driveways. And excavation within the shallow groundwater table shall be avoided except for what is necessary to accommodate development. And lastly, the minor variance application that also came along with the severance application is to reduce the minimum lot frontage from 36 meters to 20.63 meters for parcel created under B03 2024. Reflects an existing lot frontage on Old Mill Road, and it forms part of the original parcel. As this frontage is wide enough to provide access to the rest of Lot 3, staff didn't have any concerns with the variance application. Those are the extent of my comments, and certainly open any questions the committee may have.
Thank you, Mr. Planner. I now call upon the applicants to provide comments. Please state your name first, state your first and last name for the record prior to beginning.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair, committee members. My name is Ron Davidson. I'm a planning consultant and I worked on this application. With me tonight is one of the owners of the property, Colleen Newell. Don't know why I'm pointing because people at home probably can't see that. Trust me when I say she's over my right shoulder. And over my left shoulder is Laura Swanson. Laura is a civil engineer. And as you're going to find out in a minute, part of my presentation, you're going to hear about a lot of the work that Laura was a part of. First of all, and this isn't going to be a long presentation. I'll try not to put anybody to sleep. So we started these discussions well over 3 years ago with township staff, county planning department, county highways department, and Grace Elbow Conservation Authority. And at that time, we were advised that a series of studies would be required. Those studies being an environmental impact study, which, as the name would imply, addresses natural heritage features of the site. A D54 and D55 private servicing feasibility study, which addresses septic systems and groundwater. There was a coastal engineering assessment required to make sure that water wasn't going to come from the bay across the road and wipe out development on the property. There was an archaeological assessment that was done. And then there was a grading plan, which deals with drainage, and a site servicing plan. And then my planning justification report. So these plans that I talk about, Laura prepared, and with the assistance of the ecologist. And what it did is it demonstrated or provided building envelopes or development envelopes for the 4 properties. So there's a lot of work that has gone into this, and I'm hoping that anybody that is participating tonight with comments, I'm hoping they had an opportunity to review those studies, because I'm thinking that some of their concerns, maybe all of their concerns, but at least some of their concerns have been addressed or will be addressed if they read those reports. When all these studies were being prepared, we did work closely with the county and the township to come up with a lot configuration that reflected the recommendations of the various reports. As you can see on the consent drawing, 3 of the lots will front onto the township road, and the 4th lot will front onto the county road. The county is fine with 1 lot being fronting onto the county road, with the idea, the understanding that the entrance will be at the north end of that lot because that's where it's safest. So there was a comment made by one of the people that wrote a letter to the municipality about safe access or impact on the county road. Well, according to the experts at the county, there won't be that. There will be 1 entrance, and they don't have an issue with that. The other 3 lots will gain their access from the township road. For what it's worth, during pre-consultation, we were advised that a minor variance would be sufficient to address the lot frontage, and that's why I applied for a minor variance. There wasn't a zoning bylaw amendment required because the lands are already zoned for residential purposes. And we did know that the hazard land mapping wasn't 100% correct. And through Laura's work, she was able to define where the hazard line map or hazard line should be. And she designed their building envelopes for each of the 4 lots outside of where the hazard area would be. And it was thought that we wouldn't need to go through a rezoning process because there is wiggle room with regard to where the hazard boundary should be in the zoning bylaw, as long as the conservation authority is satisfied and your building official is okay with that. But it appears that the conservation authority is saying that it should be defined in the zoning bylaw. And at the same time, it's being suggested that the recommendations from the various studies be implemented later through a site plan agreement that would be discussed or would be required for each of the individual properties once they are bought or sold and bought by others. We were proposing a site plan agreement now that would have been more generic, that identified building envelopes as opposed to very specific footprints. But having said all that, and I don't want to confuse anybody, Colleen and myself and Laura have talked about this, and we have no objection to the idea of a rezoning application. I will file that this week. Again, it will serve 2 purposes. One is to attach a holding symbol to make sure that the future owners do their own site plan. And secondly, it will adjust the hazard zone a little bit. So we're fine with that. Having said that, I would not have applied for minor variance if I knew we were going through a rezoning process, because what we're asking for in the minor variance could have been dealt with through the rezoning. But nevertheless, we take no objection to that, or have no objection to that, and I will file an application for zoning bylaw amendments within the next couple of days. I am getting close to the end of my presentation here. I do wish to advise, sort of to go on what you heard from Michael just now about the county official plan. The lands are designated inland lakes and shoreline settlement area in the county official plan. There's a little bit of hazard in the one corner. That designation, the inland lakes and shoreline, does allow for development. It does allow for multi-lot creation. It would give consideration to subdivisions if one was so inclined to do a subdivision. So development can occur. It does allow for single-family dwellings. Other permitted uses within that land use designation, which we're not asking for, include marinas, resource-based recreational uses, convenience, commercial uses, and public uses. Again, we're not asking for that, and the zoning doesn't allow for that, but it could. If we applied to amend the zoning bylaw, it would align up with the official plan. But again, that's not what's being proposed. 3 new lots upon which a house would be erected on the 3 new lots, and then a 4th house on the retained parcel. In terms of lot area, these lots are very large. The smallest is 1.1 acres. The next is 2.3, next is 2.6, and the retained lot is 5.4 acres. Lots of room to accomplish what needs to be done in terms of building a house, a septic system, a well, and a driveway, and leaves lots of room to implement the recommendations of the environmental impact study. So there's no concern there. These lots meet the minimum lot area requirements of the zoning bylaw. And for the most part meets the frontage requirement. However, as you've heard, the one lot doesn't meet frontage. Now, I'm going to go and speak to that, and then I'll stop talking. With regard to our minor variance to reduce the lot frontage requirement, that frontage already exists. And if you have a map in front of you that shows the lot creation, you'll see that we're not creating a new property or a new area that is 20.63 meters wide. That already exists. And then secondly, it's important to understand that the house isn't being built in that 20.63 meter wide swath of land. It's being built further back where the property balloons quite large or balloons out and becomes quite large. So there's absolutely no issue with a 20.63 meter wide lot given the size of the property. And another thing of importance to note is that this same lot that we're asking for reduced frontage from, it actually has frontage along the county road right now. And it has a huge amount of frontage, but because the way your bylaw is worded, when you have a through lot, which means your lot has frontage on one road and then on the other side has frontage on another, you take the smallest of the lot frontages. So in this case, it's the one along the township road. So I mean, it's not like the lot has a small frontage. That's simply not the case. That's it for my presentation. I am aware of the concerns that were raised by the neighbors. And I think I'd like to be given an opportunity to speak after they've asked their questions or raised their concerns. If the questions or concerns still relate to stormwater management, which I should tell you now has been certainly addressed to a great extent through Laura's reports, then if there are questions about that or anything else with regard to engineering, Laura will answer those questions. That's it for my presentation. Thank you, committee members.
Thank you. Excuse me. Back on track here. I now call upon any members of the public who may wish to make comment on this application. Please state your first and last name for the record prior to beginning. So on my list here, I have Megan Edney. Is Megan Edney with us virtually or in person?
Through you, Chair Thompson, I believe she did register to appear virtually, and I don't see anyone online, and I don't see anyone in person here stepping up.
Okay, well, I'll check back on her when we're done. I do see a couple of the delegates who may wish to speak. Shelley Wilkin and Kevin Block.
Yeah, hi, that's me. I'm Shelley Wilkin-Block. Thank you to the council. I feel I'll just say a little bit out of my depth here. I don't, by any means, I'm not a planner. I don't really understand those huge reports. We did have some concerns, so I wrote a letter about that. Part of that had to do with already the water issues and the runoff that we already currently experience. So that's definitely a concern. And I was wondering also about the minor variance, whether that, set a precedence around things as well. And, certainly the character, the community character, I think was sort of forefront in my mind just around thinking about some of the development that's happening and some of the concerns that way, and some questions around how once lots are parceled off and there are different owners in terms of who follows to make sure the requirements that have been put forth in the reports are followed. So that's sort of where we're coming from.
Thank you, Ms. Wilkin. Staff and applicant, would you like to go through all of the comments first and then address them, or go individually?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I suggest we go through the comments first because there may be similarities within the comments, and then we can address those themes after the comments are presented.
Very good. So if you have no more comment, Ms. Wilkin, I'll move to Sherry Thompson. I think she is also intending to speak.
Hi there. I apologize for the backlighting in my room. This is as good as I could get. So I promise I am here. Let's see if my light works. So I had sent in a letter that I was told would be read. I was just tuning in case I got home from work in time to do so, but I apologize for being slightly late to the meeting. That was as close to time as I could get here. I was wondering if that letter had been read, or if the intent was for the letter to be read, or if the intent was more for me to go through sort of point by point and ask those questions at this point in time. Which would be preferred?
You have the floor, so
Okay.
I'll turn it over to you, and we'll let you share your concerns.
Sure. So we had a few concerns very similar to Ms. Wilkin. Number one, about some of the environmental concerns to the area. So the property does represent sort of the last undeveloped area along that coastline. And we've noticed from other developments along the road that there has been sort of maybe limited regard for some of the impact to with runoff into the lake, with water, with land development and poor silt fencing, with cutting down of coastal trees or shoreline trees, which has also been done along the property in question today, sort of as I think the property was being talked about being subdivided off. I know we've had those concerns in the past with development and wonder moving forward how those would be addressed and how sort of future owners would be looked upon to not be cutting down some of those trees along the shoreline. We also had similar concerns about runoff. So we know that the area around our cottage, which borders lot proposed 3, I believe, is quite soggy, and we were worried about the increase in land elevation that will go along with some of the development and how that may impact runoff onto our properties. We were also sort of concerned about a lot of the disruption that might occur along the shoreline with installing 4 wells and what that might do to, again, sort of the last undeveloped coastal area along that stretch of road. We did bring up the concern about safety onto Grey Road 1 with the proposed driveway heading off onto the bottom of the hill, and wondered if there were other safety concerns about having access to the property in that location. And again, we also had concerns about the minor variance. So similar to Mrs. Wilkin, about the proposed minor variance and sort of decreasing the frontage that's required for a shoreline development to the 20.6 meters. So we wondered whether that would set precedents for the future for other properties, that shrinkage of that frontage would be sort of the norm. And then the last was, again, just in some of the way that this has been handled with sort of go-betweens with various neighbors and proposing, showing sort of hand-drawn sketches of subdivisions. It has sort of changed a little bit of some of that community and character along the road that we've come to really enjoy about being on Olmwood Road, and has just some concerns about how all of this has gone down. I think that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. So I will turn this to staff and the applicant to respond, and then I'll move to committee members.
Thank you. I will be really brief here because I'm going to turn it over to Laura, our engineer, in a second. But what I will say, Laura's going to address stormwater because that is something that she spent a great deal of time addressing, because that was part and parcel of this application submission. In terms of the character of the neighborhood, I say this respectfully. I mean, you've got single family dwellings up and down the road. I think in the last couple of years, there were two more built. I know there were, because they're just off this property or to the side of the property, and you're going to see 4 more. Again, my opinion is that doesn't change a character of a neighborhood. If you're introducing a commercial use or maybe some high density use, yeah, but I mean, the idea of building 4 homes, they're just 4 single family dwellings. In terms of, again, creating the lot frontage, that 20.6 meter frontage, like I said, it already exists. If you take a look at the map that's been sent out, you see that swath that's that wide, that isn't changing. And like I said, at the back of that same property, it's got a humongous frontage, but because the bylaw is worded the way it is, you take the shorter of your 2 frontages and you call that your official lot frontage. In terms of safety access, as I said earlier, the county highways department was very much involved in this project. They said you can have 1 lot off of the county road or 1 entrance, have it at the north end of the lot. They were out, county highways department. They got a visual as to exactly where that entrance will go. It is shown on our drawings, and they are fine with it. And lastly, in terms of precedent setting, I mean, you don't have to take my word for it, but planners will tell you nothing is precedent setting. Every application has to be treated on its own merit. Again, if we're talking about a reduced lot frontage being precedent setting, again, that frontage already exists at that number. And again, the development isn't occurring within that 20-meter wide swath. It's occurring at the back of the property. So in this case, there should be absolutely no issues. But those are just my thoughts. Before I sit down, I will say that, just so everybody understands, these reports have been prepared. And when the severance is granted, there will be through this zoning process that we're talking about tonight, that I'm going to start the next couple of days. There will be a holding symbol attached to the zoning of each of these properties. So what that means is when Colleen sells each of these lots, the new owner will have to prepare a detailed site plan prepared by an engineer. Makes sense to hire Laura, but they can hire whoever they want. And that engineering report is going to be looked at by the Conservation Authority and by township staff. Once everybody is okay with it, the owner will have to apply to have the holding symbol removed. It's like a zoning bylaw amendment, but it's a slightly different process. And then, just to be clear, the neighbors aren't involved when the holding symbol is removed. Thought I should throw that out there. But so each of these 4 lots will be looked at that much closer, and all the recommendations from the environmental impact study, the lot grading and drainage plans that Laura has prepared, they will be factored into this site plan that gets registered on title. The builder must conform to that site plan. It's a legally binding document. That's all I got to say. Laura is going to speak to the drainage issues. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to the drainage and the grading and stormwater management requirements for this project, because it's the development, because there's no new roads developed, there was no requirement really for controlling the stormwater flows from post-development to pre-development. That's typically required on larger developments and if you're going to be building like new roads or like parking lots. So this is because there are existing roads that we were going to be making use of. We were just required to prepare a storm drain, a storm water or just a water management plan, like in grading and drainage. So in order to deal with the stormwater, and I wanted to try and just make sure I got it conveyed safely off the property without having any negative impacts to the neighbors. Anywhere downstream of where there was driveways or dwellings, I placed ditches along the property lines to safely convey the stormwater around the property. So any stormwater running off the property, it should now hit the ditch and be routed downhill and into the existing ditches along the roadway. So theoretically, there would be less water running off of the properties. Less water running onto the properties that abut the subject development at this time. And in terms of, there's no requirement for water quality for developments of this kind, but we are using like grass ditches, which can provide a little bit of stormwater quality enhancements. Thank you.
Thank you. I now will turn to the committee. Are there any points raised by the planner, applicant, or public that the committee wishes to respond to or ask a question about? I'm just gonna, for the staff there, Councillor Colburn is just on the edge of the screen, so I can't see her. She has her hand up. Yes. Did you have your hand up?
I did. Sorry, I'm not sure which way to lean so you can see
that's
me.
better. Yep, keep going. That's good. You have the floor, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. I did receive some correspondence from an area resident as well, listing some similar concerns as to what's been already addressed, particularly around the lot size of lot number 1 and the unnamed water source and the management of that that runoff. I think those have been adequately addressed. I had a question for our planner through you, Chair Thompson. The presenter made reference to going through this minor variance process as opposed to going through the zoning process, rezoning process, and doing it all together. How is it that how do we make sure that that process gets maybe simplified? Is that the right word? In the future, is it because of delays that we get from the consulting agencies, and I guess my question is it typical for this to come before committee of adjustment before a rezoning has occurred at the council, or is that a little bit backwards here? Thank you.
Thank you, and to you, Mr. Chair, to Member Coburn. Two parts of the question. The typically when you go through an application, you'll have a pre-consultation, and Mr. Davidson and I chatted about these in the past. Recognize that there's some lots, there's a variance required, and then you get comments coming in from agencies, and sometimes you have to determine how best to address agency comments. And there are times when a holding provision through a zoning bylaw amendment is one of the better avenues to address agency comments that pertain to the actual development of the lots as opposed to the severance of the lots. So unfortunately, that's something that you really can't, you can kind of think maybe this might come up, but it's until you get those agency comments, it's very difficult to know exactly what the requirements will be. So it's hard to preempt that sort of thing. What I can do is work with Mr. Davison to see if there's a way to simplify the variance application that's already submitted and perhaps merge that with the zoning application, look at our fee policies do allow for a reduction in fees and that sort of thing for concurrent applications. So we can explore those avenues. And then what was the second question? Oh, yeah, I think we would go so. Yeah, thank you.
That's it for me, Chair Thompson.
Thank you. Any further questions from other committee members? So I'm not sure if I'm asking the same question as Councillor Coburn or something similar, but I think I understand the holding provision. I guess my fear is that, so in the past we've had lots created and an assurance that, well, drainage can work or will be determined at another date or when it comes time to build. And something slips away from us, and then after development we have a problem with water. So my question is, I guess, the agencies have looked at this and made some comments. We have a property here. We have an assurance that, well, when this creates the lots, and then when people come to build, they'll have to satisfy some of the environmental concerns and worries that people raise. But here is my question: is, when we create these lots, are we creating lots that people think are build ready? And then when they come forward to us, find out, oh, there are some concerns about this. So I understand the holding provision, but is it clear enough to say to someone, and I know there is an element of buyer beware, but I also think there is an element of transparency that I think we're interested in. Does the holding provision clearly enough state or bring people's attention to there may be some considerations you need to do to ensure proper drainage and other environmental concerns?
To you, Mr. Chair, the way the holding provision will work is once that bylaw is passed, there will be a site-specific zone placed on these properties. There'll be shoreline residential dash H. And when everyone goes to buy these properties, hopefully they do their due diligence and they check the zoning bylaw to see what that H would be. And when they look at that site-specific zone, that H will have a number of conditions that need to be satisfied. And they'll see that right in that zoning amendment. So that's one piece of it. Then when those, say the lots have been purchased and the people go and want to apply for a building, the part of the building permit application process is a zoning bylaw review. And that zoning bylaw review will then see that the properties have this hold provision on it, and it'll show that all these things need to be addressed prior to a hold being lifted off of the lots. And the chief building official will not be able to issue a building permit till that hold provision is lifted. So it'll be triggered by they'll see it through the building permit application. Hopefully by then, all the studies are in place, all the site plans are done, or at least that's all occurring during the building approval review process. And then once the conditions of the holding provision are satisfied, that's when the building official can then issue a building.
Thank you, Mr. Planner. So in your comments, Mr. Planner, you talked about some conditions that I'm not sure we included in the recommendation.
That's correct. The in the recommendation, we just have a generalized recommendation that a zoning bylaw amendment, just getting up to those recommendations, that a zoning bylaw amendment be enacted to implement the consent. And then in the body of my report, I detailed what that amendment would look like. That's a fairly common way of doing a zoning amendment for the consent. But if committee wishes, we can further refine that last condition to include the provisions that we would be looking for in a zoning amendment.
So reading between the lines, I think we have a motion on the floor. If a committee member wishes to make an amendment, now would be the time to do that. Okay. Committee member Ladressa.
Yeah, I'd be willing to make the amendment to add the zoning provision if that's something that the applicant would be satisfied with.
Committee member Moore Coburn.
Sorry, I'm just wondering what the specific wording for that amendment might be, just so I'm clear before we vote.
Thank you.
Is that something staff might be able to help us with?
Certainly, and if I may, Mr. Chair, I can suggest some wording.
Thank you.
That I can follow that condition. So then condition 7 would read that a zoning amendment, back down to here.
Are you talking about condition? I think you're talking about condition 8, maybe 7.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Condition 8. That a zoning amendment be implemented that amends the environmental protection zone mapping on the subject lands and places a holding provision on the subject lands to address following matters, and all those matters I read earlier, which I can reread. One, that site plans and development agreements be prepared for the individual lots demonstrating the following. that the owner agrees to not remove any vegetation or otherwise disturb the Township of Georgian Bluffs shoreline road allowance without the prior written approval of the township. B, that any entrances for the proposed buildings be located above the dry floodproofing level of 178.7 meters. C, that the lots shall generally maintain surface drainage to Colby's Bay. Proper sediment and erosion control methods shall be installed prior to development commencing and maintained throughout development. Disturbed areas shall be stabilized post-development with native vegetation. Swales planted with native vegetation shall be provided between lots to maintain stormwater runoff quality and quantity moving north into the old road mill municipal drain. Local fill shall be used if required. D, tree and vegetation removal shall be limited to only what is necessary to accommodate the building footprints and access driveways. Tree and vegetation removal shall avoid the bird nesting timelines between April 15th and August 15th of any given year. A planting plan shall be required that shows all trees proposed for removal that are of 10 centimeters at diameter, breast height, size, or greater shall be replanted at a 2-to-1 compensation rate with native species. And E, excavation within the shallow groundwater table shall be provided except for what is necessary to accommodate development.
Thank you, Mr. Planner. So I have committee member Ladresse is willing to move that amendment. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Committee member Moore Colburn. I will call the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Secretary Treasurer, do I have to vote on the original motion?
Through you, Chair Thompson, yes, as amended.
So we have a mover and a seconder for the original motion. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? That motion is carried. This public hearing is now adjourned. Item 7.2, development 2024-025 B0921. This is a severance application for Roger Hayes for lands described as Lot 21, Concession 15, Keppel Township. It is consistent with the provincial policy statement, conforms to the County of Grey's official plan, and complies with the intent of the Township of Georgian Bluffs zoning bylaw 2020-20. It is recommended that the application be approved subject to the following conditions. The reference plan be completed and a copy filed with the municipal clerk, or an exemption from the reference plan be received from the Land Registry Office. That pursuant to Section 53, paragraph 42 of the Planning Act, the certificate of consent be affixed to the deed within 2 years of the giving of the notice of decision, or as specified in the Planning Act at the time of the deed stamping. Note, Section 53, paragraph 43 of the Planning Act requires that the transaction approved by this consent must be carried out within 2 years of the issuance of the certificate, i.e. the stamping of the deed, that the applicant pays the applicable consent certification fee at the time of the certification of deeds, and that the applicant pay 5% cash in lieu of parkland in accordance with the Planning Act. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Moved by committee member McMillan, seconded by committee member Ladresse. I'll turn this over to the planner for comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just getting down to the application summary. So this application was originally presented at the December Committee of Adjustment meeting, but was deferred pending the receipt of a karst study and a bedrock resource assessment, as well as reconfiguration of the proposed lot to better match the township zoning bylaw. So in the meantime, the applicant has retained an engineer to provide both comments and recommendations on a karst study and the bedrock resource assessment. And the proposed severed lot has been reconfigured to reflect the lot area requirements of 0.8 hectares. I'm just going to go through some of the policies that play out of that, if I may. So the when you look at the county's official plan, it's designated rural, and all consents for new lot and rural development have to shall be no smaller than 0.8 hectares in area. And there's a table in the county's official plan that shows how consents can happen based on the original township lot fabric. And this subject property just happens to occupy the entirety of the original township lot, so 40.44 hectares. And so the creation of additional lot meets that lot density policies. The county official plan and county staff also noted the need for a minimum distance separation formula calculation to be completed on the existing barn that's on the subject lands, because it was within 750 meters of the proposed lot being severed. I've looked at that barn, and it's my professional opinion that barn is incapable of housing livestock. I've also had discussions with Mr. Hayes on that barn, and he presently uses it for storage, and certainly willing to dismantle the barn if necessary, if the MDS question comes forward. But based on the condition and use of that barn right now, when you look at the MDS guidelines prepared by Ministry of Agriculture and Food, MDS would not apply to a barn that is not capable of sometime in the future housing livestock. So, so the MDS piece, in my opinion, anyways, is not required. So Schedule B of the county OP also notes that the subject lands contain karst studies. And as such, a karst study was prepared by the applicant, and that study noted that there are some karst features in the active farming areas of the lot, but there's no karst features what were encountered in any of the test holes as part of the investigation, and those test holes were on the proposed severed lands. That same study also noted that given the high groundwater levels in the area, they're inferred to be very shallow, and there are other factors that would cause significant challenges to Aggregate Resource Act licensing for that area. So the engineers felt that the potential for bedrock extraction on this site was very limited and would not be very economical. In terms of relevant consultation, the notice of complete application and public hearing was circulated last October 12th, of various agencies for review. Grey County Planning Development Services provided comments on November 9th, 2023. They basically noted that the creation of the additional lot would meet OP policies and the frontage to depth ratio, but the frontage to depth ratio at the time was less than the 1:3 ratio. So they suggested that the lot be enlarged to meet those ratios. They also noted that a nitrate study would not be required, but they did recommend that MDS calculations perhaps should be done, and that a karst study should also be completed. Enbridge Gas provided comments on October 23rd, 2023, and they noted no concerns. Source water protection comments were also provided on October 20th, 2023, and they noted that the property is not located within a vulnerable source protection area and therefore had no concerns under the Clean Water Act. Those are the extent of my comments and the extent of any comments received from agencies or public.
Thank you, Mr. Planner. Is there any discussion, questions from committee members? Okay. If we're prepared, then I'll call the vote. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Before I move to item 7.3, I'll just make a note that committee member Moore Colburn has declared a pecuniary interest. So I will, committee member Moore Colburn, is your plan to remove yourself from the chair or to wait in the chair?
I was going to leave the room and I can come back once this file's been voted on.
I was being rhetorical. I assumed you probably would. I was just buying you some time to go ahead and do that.
Thank you.
So item 7.3, Dev 2024-26, consent application B04-24 for Barfoot Shantz, a change of condition. The recommendation is that the Committee of Adjustment amend condition 6 of the March 19th, 2024 Committee of Adjustment decision for consent application B04-24 to read the road widening of 8 feet along 2nd Avenue Southeast be conveyed to the county for the retained parcels rather than 17 feet. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder. And I will turn this over to the planner for comment.
Through you, Chair Thompson, I'm not sure if you called a mover and seconder there.
I think I asked for one and saw the hands, and maybe I didn't award it. So I will ask for a mover and a seconder again. Moved by committee member McMillan and seconded by committee member Ladresse. My apologies, it's a long day. I'm ready for dinner, I guess. I'll turn it over to the planner for comment now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this application goes back to the last committee of adjustment from actually March 19th. And at that meeting, the county had requested a road widening of 17 feet, 5.18 meters on both the severed and the retained parcels. So further discussions with the applicant's agent, township staff, and county staff resulted in a revised requirement for road widening that reduces the requested width to 8 feet or 2.44 meters and remove the need for the road widening from the severed lands simply because they don't have any road frontage. And that updated requirement was included in an email from the county's planning department dated April 8th. And essentially that email reflects what was just noted. And county staff would obviously have no concerns with a amended condition. And I've also spoken to the applicant's agent, Mr. Barfoot, and he was also quite happy if condition 6 could be amended to now state that a road widening of 8 feet, 2.44 meters along 2nd Avenue Southeast be conveyed to the county for the retained lands.
Thank you, Mr. Planner. Are there any questions for the planner? I have a procedural question before I call the vote. Typically, quorum for us is 5, and the chair doesn't need to vote except to break a tie. In this circumstance where we have 2 members, is it suggested Fire Secretary Treasurer that I vote on this.
Through you, Chair Thompson, yes, quorum for Committee of Adjustment is 3 members. So you can call the vote. Correct.
Okay, I will call the vote. All those in favor? That recommendation is carried.
And through you, Chair Thompson, sorry to interrupt, I will just go advise Member Coburn that she can now return.
Perfect. I was just gonna yell real loud. I'll let you do it your way. Thank you and welcome back, Committee Member Moore Coburn. The date of our next regular meeting is May 21st at 5 p.m. And if there's no further business, I will now call for an adjournment. And mover and seconder, moved by Committee Member McMillan, seconded by Committee Member Ladresse. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Thanks very much, folks. Have a good night. Thank you, staff. Oh, is Michael still there?
I am, sir.
I have an easy question. Are you able to are Michael and I able to stay on after you cancel the live stream, Rayburn?
Not necessarily.
Okay. Can I call your cell, Michael?
Yeah. Do you need the number?
I don't know your cell. Or I can give you mine and you